Georgia, Tasur Gungul Shiv and Marver Slanche, Shayanov and Shakhtar Adeag, the mean the Marta Fihedo.
Weeds and bushes and trees and all kinds. Challenging is not the word. Broke another one. Another fly gone. Good job I can tie our own.
Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. And with many rivers around Ireland having opened since St. Patrick's Day, this week's episode is with Tipperary's George McGrath of Gundog and Fly YouTube fame. George has fished for over 50 years on the River Suir, and he gives us an insight into what works for him on the water. Plus, he laments how wet fly fishing has fallen out of vogue in recent years in favour of a culture of instant gratification. Tom, it was a really enjoyable interview, I have to say, and George is a real character. He's a real true hunting and fishing man, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, you got a real insight into the guy. He's really keen, and his knowledge on all things about the shore was really good. And really interesting there when he mentioned about the wet fly. I was talking to him about that because and he said, when he brings up about it's got to be your nymphing now. Just made me think. I remember that happening to me on the Corb here. It's kind of the same situation. I was fishing with Mike Keady, who we've had on the show, and we're in a bay, and there's about 10 boats all buzzer fishing. I presume you're aware that buzzer fishing it's kind of like the lake equivalent of Euro nymphing. It's the new way of catching fish, and we're all there, and all the boats are there for about an hour and a half, and nobody was catching. And the next thing, we saw a few olives popping up, and saw a couple of fish moving to them, and we said, they're on olives, they're not on buzzers. So we both switched to wets. And within I'd say 3/4 of an hour, with about 5 fish, really good fish, caught one straight away, covering them. And we were still the only boat after an hour that was wet fly fishing. Nobody changed over. Everybody was just still there, buzzer fishing.
Mechanically, just going through the motions.
Going through the motions, like what George was saying, that it's got to be Euro nymphing, and that's it, and that's how we catch fish. And no, we went back to the Sean Valach, which I'll put the Irish in now, which is what we say around here for the old way. There's more Irish ahead, by the way.
Yes, tune in.
Tune in to find out. Yeah, so we went back to the Sean Valach that day, and it was great. It was great. We got him, and it's nice. It's lovely. It just goes to show, sometimes you don't forsake all the old methods.
It's what's in your face. It's nature is telling you. There was olives.
Yeah, there was olives. There was a couple of fish moving. Call me Sherlock, but
but it is amazing, isn't it? How we get into that blinkered way of doing things, and like salmon fishing's the same as well. People just used to doing the step and the cast, and just going through it methodically and mechanically, not thinking about, okay, where might the fish be lying in these conditions or something like that. And like you're saying with the tactics there, like. Yeah,
really. There with the salmon, step and cast, and not even thinking maybe I should wait in this spot a bit longer because that looks really likely over there. Yeah. But no, sometimes we just go into automatic, don't think.
It was interesting because for when you hear this from George really came out hard against the Euro nymphing, and dubs as well in the same part, I might add as well.
I felt sorry for you. I really did.
So if you're a dub who likes the Euro nymph, don't listen to this episode. You might be insulted, but I'm maybe. Both, but I'm still laughing. I have to say though, would you agree with him as much in terms of the Euro nymphing? And I suppose I agree. I know where he's coming at it from. It just becomes too habitual for somebody to just right, I'm just going to Euro nymph and that's it.
I do agree with that. Well, I really see where he's coming from, because he sees a really good method like wet fly fishing always been cast aside for something that does work, and let's be honest, fair play to him, he does say it is incredibly effective method, but I think there's a part from that hates to see the wet fly just would have been almost disparaged, or spoke about disparagingly,
Yeah, no, that's very true. Actually, it just finally, before we get to George, competitions are back for you as well. You were out competition fishing.
There's been a couple of competitions. Great. I mean, as you know, I'm really fond of the competition. So they've started here, and Mike Keady, myself and himself, fished a competition at the weekend, the Thread 50. We've had success before, not for us this weekend. It was won by Darren Maguire and Gene Harron. second time on the trot. So fair play to them. But it was great. I really enjoyed them. The week before is one smaller one in the commercial in Galway. Really enjoyed it. Just meeting up with everybody again, the banter, just getting to meet people. After 2 solid years of not fishing them, it's just been really good. I love it, and there's a few more coming up now. So look forward to them.
Well, sure. Look, let's get back to George McGrath and hear from George what he had to say about River Suir, 50 years of fly fishing on it, what works for him, and some great insights about fishing on that river, incredible river that it is. But first, George told me about his Gundog and Fly YouTube channel.
Well, to be honest about it, I had no idea when I started it off. And I mean, seriously, and it's not false modesty or anything, I had no idea whatsoever that anybody would be interested in what I did, because when I started off, I put up a hunting video. I'm into hunting as well. I was out shooting pheasants and hunting. I love gundogs. I'm just stone mad about them. And I was out hunting one day and I just recorded it on this little camera that my wife bought me. It fitted on my cap, and I made a complete and utter hames of it. No, I mean, it was the first video I ever recorded. And I did part of it in Irish as well, right? Just that's the way I do things. And I put the video up, and when I look back on it now, I think, oh my God, it was absolutely terrible in every which way you could imagine, But like, what I did was I put up a second video and then a third video, and I found that people were becoming interested. But I had an awful lot to learn about making videos. I've been doing it now maybe, I think, more than 10 years. And over that period of time, like you say, I've gained 10,000 subscribers. But it's very, very slow and very incremental, Like
it's the consistency, isn't it, George? Just putting them out regular.
Like I pump out a video when I'm in good form, roughly every week to 10 days, right? But you constantly have to come up with relative other new ideas or different slants on things, Like you can only do so many Euro nymphing videos, you know what I mean? Because it's the same thing essentially, So the channel's going very well. But the strangest thing is, right, my most successful video, right, and I'm going to be brutally honest about this, it's now had over 600,000 views, and that's since last September, so that's roughly 6 months. So it's had 100,000 views a month over the 6 months, we'll say, right? And it's a video I made just off the cuff. I was stuck for a video to make, and I went out and I said, I'm going to do a video on zeroing a .22 rifle. I told a heap of lies in it, right? That's facts. I told a heap of lies, and the whole thing was just done off the cuff. It took me about 10 minutes to do it. And ones that I'd put loads of effort into hardly make any views at all. It's very strange the way the internet works. Like the thing that you might imagine people wouldn't be interested in at all is the thing that they are interested in,
Was it just literally word of mouth like that over the 10 years? It just, just grew and grew over time?
Yeah, it grew and grew. It's just like subscribers just started to grow, Like I gain a couple of hundred subscribers every week, So like the ones that people are more interested in, curiously enough, are the hunting ones, right? They're more popular than the fishing ones. And I would consider that my fishing videos are way better than the hunting videos, if you like, from my point of view, The fishing videos, I do kind of instructional stuff, and then I just I'm out here fishing sort of stuff, and I tie flies and just all general sort of fishing stuff. But yeah, people like the fishing stuff too, I have people who religiously watch them and they comment on them and that kind of thing, So it is, it's going well for me. I like doing it as well,
Yeah, agus caiimé á runúne bug freisin trí géige fair play right.
Yeah, Déana míocht le gcóí rein gháilna le leabhar sna videos mar deartha ach tá gom nach digan gachéine chu tá mé rá ach tá mé chun éana agus tá mé chun leanún leis.
Well, tá fair play right. Ceap mé hen ggóil sin pá agus nuair a thola me se na cúpla focail scéalge céadú le héad bhí sin go héanta ar fad go héanta fair play.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, guys, I just love hearing the Cúpla Foca like that as well. And even George, I was watching your latest or one of your most recent videos, the one from Paddy's Day fly fishing, and just hearing those Cúpla Foca at the start, even myself, like I said, I don't speak Irish, but I can, understand the couple of folk, and you kind of feel like at least it's still being brought to the fore. It's not, you don't feel like it's just dying out, when you hear that language, and especially in a modern context, whether it's gundogs or fly fishing, and it's great to hear it, like, and, actually yourself, Tom, as well, like, you're a Gaeilgeoir, Tom. That was your first, wasn't it, Tom, your first language growing up? Like,
no, it wasn't actually my first language, because no, neither my folks did, but I'm from a Gaeltacht area. But everything I did through primary school was through Irish. I had 1 year of school here, secondary school in Cornamona, and actually did my first year of science through Irish. So I know how to get the volume of a stone through Irish. It's Delush Clocha all. We're really digressing here, but yeah, what really helped me, I worked in O'Malley's Bar in Cornamona for about 4 years back in the 90s, and that really brought up my Irish. Really did.
Do you mind if I just wouldn't mind going off on a tangent just for a second here, just to divert away, like, just for like, because I hear you using the, you do often trying to use the couple of folk, the way George does it as well. Like, is it something that just you're always trying to bring to the fore consciously in terms of your day-to-day living, just to kind of make sure that, look, you don't lose it or don't forget it, or what is it like?
Yeah, I think so. I think you do make a conscious effort when you get a chance. I mean, you know you're going to meet somebody that you can have a conversation in Irish with. You make the effort.
It enriches your life in every which way. Unlike you, Tom, I wasn't brought up in the Gaeltacht area. I left school at 14. I left school very young, and I had virtually no Irish when I left school, even after, in spite of the fact that I'd given years learning it in school. Everyone in the class used to say, "Oh, I hate Irish," which is a ridiculous statement in a sense. It was the way it was being taught in the classrooms. They didn't sit us down and have a chat. They made it an academic, and I think we rebelled against it. But the importance of it for me cannot be overemphasized. I think it's fundamental to me as an Irish person to be able to speak my own language.
How did you go about learning it?
Oh, a long story, but basically I left home at 16. I went to live in England. I gave 8 years over there, and after the 8 years, I began to rediscover how important my Irish identity actually was. And as part of trying to recover my identity, or to strengthen my sense of identity, I figured that the language would really help me in that regard, and I set out to learn. And I had a couple of people, luckily enough, living locally here. I had a native speaker from Connemara who was one great man. He was a really funny man. I'll tell you very briefly a couple of quick stories. He worked in fact in the Cashel Palace Hotel, right, as a waiter, but he was very fond of a drink, and that was accepted because he was seen as a sort of character, and he was the main man at the, what would you call him? There's a name on it, a French word, whatever. It'd be a fáilteoir in Gaeilge. He'd be at the door to meet people coming and all that. And I could tell you some very funny stories, but I won't delay on it. But he was a great man. He really helped me. When I'd be here where I'm sitting now, and I'd be trying to figure out, how would I say this in Irish? I'd get up and I'd go up to I'd say Vesti, because that's what I call him. His real name was Sean Shoig, but everyone locally here called him Vesti. Right, and I go up to Vesti and I say, Vesti, how would I say that in Irish? And he'd just say it to me, and I'd write it down, and then that would stick in my head, just that sentence. And it was the way he spoke the language. It was just so beautiful and so poetic, and it flowed, and it just hit a spot with me. It hit a place in me, somewhere very important, and I still get that feeling when I speak Irish. I'm a member of Conor na Gaeilge here in Cashel, and during the winter time we have what we call our Chora Chostinne, which is a little fireside chat we have every Monday night, and the local Gaeilgeoirs, of which there aren't that many, generally speaking, could be between half a dozen and a dozen people, depending on the weather and that kind of. We get together on Monday night and we have a great old crack. We talk about, we name it, same as anyone have a conversation in English. We just talk about it in Irish, and that's how I kind of maintain the practice, because I'm like most people in Ireland, except if you live in a Gaeltacht area or in an Irish-speaking house, unfortunately, trying to get practice is difficult, So on a daily basis, I speak Irish. I make a point of speaking Irish. I just go into the local shops and I use simple phrases with people. And most people are very well and positively disposed towards the language, and they'll make the little effort. But people can be shy about it too, you see, because they're afraid to make mistakes. And they're not one bit afraid to make mistakes in English, curiously. You know what I mean? But they're afraid of
and yet they make them in English. Actually, This is the funny thing. We all make, we can all make mistakes in general conversation in English, but we don't care when we do.
Absolutely.
So we make, but we do. People do in Irish because they're conscious of it.
Yeah.
I think it's the speed of it as well. I think that's the kind of thing that you're conscious of, because, like I said, you're exmuin of in Muirla, and then you're trying to kind of Gaeilge. And whereas, and I always find the problem is like I said, I could think of the words and I'm trying to translate it in Irish before I say it. But then when you're saying it back to me, I'm like, probably got about a third.
You see, it's mental gymnastics when you're learning it, because you have to, first of all, formulate the sentence you want to say in the language that you're familiar with, obviously English. You have to then translate that into Irish, verbalize it. Then when you get a response in Irish, you have to translate that back into English and then try and formulate another. So you're doing that mental gymnastics all the time until such time as go down the close of that here, until your ear gets used to hearing it and your brain becomes part of the process, if you like. So like when I'm speaking Irish, say right now, I'm performing those them gymnastics, but I'm so used to doing that it happens very quickly. But if I give me 10, 15 minutes to speaking to someone in Irish, and then my brain switches into Irish mode, if you like. I don't have to do as much mental gymnastics, if that makes sense.
It's a bit like fly fishing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice segue.
That's legend beautifully.
Speaking of which, George, where and how did fly fishing then come into your life?
Well, my generations of my family have been involved in country sports such as hunting, fishing, ferreting, lamping rabbits, all that kind of thing. I was reared with it. My father was reared with it. We were reared on fast food, hares and rabbits. You know what I mean? That's a fact. That's the way we are. My grandfather had a famous saying. He said, anything more than 20 yards from the house was wild, right? And fair game. I could tell you a million stories about that kind of thing. But basically, I was brought to the river when I was very small, maybe 6 or 7 years of age. An elder stick was cut out of the ditch. There was a bit of butcher's twine, maybe 10 yards of it, tied onto it, and then about a yard of nylon and a black eel hook. You put a worm on it and you threw it out. We were fishing for eels. That's how I started off. Very primitive, but fly fishing, what happened was I had a passion for it from first day. I couldn't wait to get back to the river again. I'd eat and drink it and sleep it. I remember I wasn't thinking about it recently. There was a little booklet that I don't know, did my father pick it up in a tackle shop someplace or other. It was like but it had all the different spinners and the baits and the flies and the rods, because there was no tackle shops around at that time. I mean, literally there wasn't any. And I was looking through it and I'd give hours looking at it. If I only had that now, I'd catch more. I was obsessed with it from first day. And then I was given a fly rod by a publican here in town, right? It was two halves of two different rods pushed together, but they were seized together and couldn't be taken apart. And it was 11 foot long. There was a bad reel that the click was gone in. It was knackered. And I never forget it, a kingfisher line, the old silk lines. And I went down to the river with that, and I would have to walk to the river because you couldn't get a lift in anyone's car because it was too long. You know what I mean? Unless it was good weather, they might give you a lift and have some of it out the window or something. But there was one chap here locally who used to give me, he'd be going that direction, on a Honda 50, and he used to pick me up. And I'd go down there and I'd spend all day down there with my 11-foot rod. And I just couldn't get enough of it. And it's like that ever since. I'm just obsessed with it. Obsessed.
When you were in England, then did it fall by the wayside, and did it?
Well, I got up to stuff in England that I wouldn't talk about in polite company, and I did a lot of things maybe I shouldn't have done. But during that period, I actually fished over there as well. I used to fish in the River Thames for eels under Hammersmith Bridge. Believe it or not.
Is that legal?
Yeah, it is actually. There was other people. I was fishing for reasons. There was other fellas there that knew about course fishing and all that. So like I suppose I was fulfilling my destiny in a sense. I was still doing it, but I was distracted by other things that weren't very healthy. But anyway, that's beside the point. When I came home, I immediately got back into it, and I've been at it ever since. Like I used to, when I had no transport. I'd get up in the morning, I'd head down to the river, give all day fishing, walk back in home, which is 3 miles, have whatever there was to eat, and then I'd head back down in the evening again for the evening rise, and then walk home late at night. It was that obsessional, you know. It's like gets into your blood in a sense, and eat.
Then when you got, like, you're talking there, like, obviously you just fished local first off. Then I ask you now, like, I know the Suir is a huge river, and you're only just talking about Cashel. But then when you got transport, did you start going to other parts of it?
Well, you see, the Suir is more than 100 miles long. It's 115 miles long, right? And it varies in size, where you could jump across it to where you'd need quite a boat and a couple of strong men to row across it down at the estuary. You know what I mean? So like there's a huge variety of water. And I'm very lucky where I am, because I'm sort of midways along, if you know what I mean. Well, a third of the way down from the mountains. And we probably have the best river fishing in Ireland and possibly in Europe here. It's just incredible. I mean, the fishing on the shore, like I fished in many, many places. I fished around the world in different places, and there's nowhere to touch it. Seriously, it's that good. The river fishing here is just phenomenal. It has the highest density population of trout per given area than any river in Europe. And that's an actual fact. That's compiled by the various fishery authorities. We have a huge head of fish in the shore. But I'll tell you, you need to know your stuff to catch them. Anyone can go down maybe and catch a fish or two on a given day. But to catch them consistently on the shore, you need to know your onions. You know what I mean? And I've seen people, I'll give you an example. I've taken people from all over the world fishing on the shore. And just to give you an example now, I've met some very good anglers. A lot of them were fellas like Dutchmen who have no trout whatsoever in their own country. But they were great anglers because they put the time traveling around the world, and they were extremely good fly anglers, despite the fact that they had no trout or rivers essentially in Holland. But anyway, to go back to this guy, just one guy who struck me in particular, and there's no reflection on him, but the truth is the truth. He came from America, and he shook my hand, and as Americans do, and he handed me his card. You know what I mean? And he had a triple-barrel name, you know, something junior or whatever the case. But he was a lovely fella, but he had letters after his name: game angling instructor, casting instructor, this, that, and the other. And I brought him down to the shore of an evening, and there was a fall of spinners on the shore. And if he was there yet, he wouldn't catch the fish. Now, that'll give you an idea, you know, like this guy was very skilled in his own place. And like he had a long list of people waiting for him to take him out and instruct him. But like when it came to the shore, he said it afterwards. He said, it's a very, very testing river. He said, he called them pesky trout, he called them. Now he caught a couple, but like.
Actually, can I just ask from that particular point, why didn't he catch them? What was he doing wrong? There was a number of things. There was a number of things. The first thing I noticed, you see, I didn't want to be telling him what to do, because like he was a game angling instructor. I was only a half Egypt from Cashel. Like, do you know what I mean? That didn't, like, when I look back on it, I knew an awful lot more than I thought I did at the time, right? But I was a young lad then, like I was in, say, my late teens, and I didn't understand that. Like when I saw this fella with letters after his name, like I said, I better stand out of the way here and watch this guy, because the first thing is he didn't know how to stalk trout. He was used to catching trout that were handy to catch, and they weren't. That's, I can only assume that they weren't leader shy, or they weren't aware of people as an enemy, if you know what I mean. The trout on the shore, like, you won't catch them unless you know. You need to know how to stalk, and you need to know how to approach them without alerting them. And he seemed to be alerting them an awful lot. So he'd be just about to cast, and the trout would go down. Now, I know for a fact at that stage that 9 times out of 10 he wouldn't have gone down on me, because I would have used a different approach, because
I had learned through the years, and I'd watched my father doing it, stalking fish. Like my father could give 10 minutes watching the trout before he'd cast the fly, you know what I mean? Until he'd figure out exactly what he needed to do. Because he knew that if he didn't do it in that particular way, that he'd put the fish down. The trout in the shore are notorious for that. They're difficult to catch. And that was one of the mistakes he made. When he would cast, he'd cast his line directly up to trout. Immediately, like lining them with just the leader. You know what I mean? The leader is enough to put him down. You need to come at him from an angle, either right or left, you know, from 45 degrees, 30 degrees, whatever. You need to come at them from an angle. It's so easy to actually alert them to your presence, particularly in the summertime. Like in the Sherry Spinner Fall, like the river is low at that time of the year. You're talking mid-June into July. The river's very low. It's gin clear. If I've seen them, you could get in downstream 20 yards from a trout and think that you're after getting into the river, and next thing he'll stop. And he'll stop, and like he has sensed you in some way. He knows that you're there. You know, that's like, I'm not exaggerating. That's actually how what do I call it? How difficult it can be. And this guy simply had never come across fish like that before.
Can I ask you, George, actually, it's interesting when, like, you know, using the word stalking and that kind of language, and it's one of the things you do kind of read about, and, you know, in terms of tips and hints. But do you think coming from that outdoor pursuit background and gun dogs, where you're used to being out in the field and, you know, what it means in terms of even the wind blowing, that's a great skill set to have that you can then bring to fly fishing?
Essentially, when you're trout fishing, particularly the type of fishing that I do, you're hunting. That's it. You're hunting. It's the same as like if you're stalking deer. You know what I mean? There's an old saying, you're stalking deer: walk a little, look a lot. And it's the same with trout fishing. Walk a little, look a lot, size things up, figure it out. A lot of people blunder about, walk up the bank of the Scary River, fish in the area. They get into their clumsy wading. Like, you require a level of finesse that you need it. Like, it's essential to be consistent. Like I say, anyone can go down and blunder around, maybe catch a trout or two, but to go down and to be consistently able to catch those fish in the difficult conditions, that's what separates the fella. And I find, I think you'll probably agree with me here, Tom, that fellas that hunt as well seem to excel, or not in every case, but generally speaking, fellas that hunt as well tend to be better fly fishers.
I was just going to say it, even on the lake, and you think on the lake, because you're not stalking as much, although you can stalk. Mm-hmm. But I was just going to say that good hunters, good shooters, quite often make very good trout anglers. You know?
Because they transfer the skills from the hunting into the fishing. And like, essentially they're the same thing. You're hunting a wild creature.
Like, yeah, I've seen guys who weren't very good casters, right? Who could slew trout. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You know, but because it was because what they made up for what they lacked in their casting. Yeah, and just everything else of them, they're just like hunters.
Yeah,
they really were. Just
and I would really like emphasize that, because I can't cast for shit. I'm not a good caster by any measure. What I try to do, like, if you asked me to cast 20 yards of a line, I'd make a balls of it. I just wouldn't be able to do it. Like, well, I possibly would. I'd struggle. You know what I mean? But if you show me a trout, I'll get within 10 feet of it. That's the difference. I don't need to be a good caster at that stage. You know what I mean? Like, most of the 90% of the trout that I catch on dry fly, 90% are within 2 lengths of the rod. And the rod I use is 9 foot. So they're within 20 feet of me. But I have, what do I call it? I have stalked into that position. That's where I tend to succeed, where the fellow who can cast 20 yards, he won't have the same level of success, because he's going to alert heaps of stuff. When you're fishing one trout in the shore, you have to wade really gently, because you're pushing other fish out of the way to get to that fish. And if you wade clumsily, they'll scatter really quickly. But if you can move them nice and gently out of your way, if you know what I mean. If you stalk gently, the trout will be aware. And if I'm trying to describe a situation where you have a trout rising, there's other trout between you and him. They're not rising, but they're there. There's no question that they're there, because the river is stuffed with them. So, but if you move quickly through them, you'll scare the fella that's rising. But if you move nice and subtly and nice and quietly, they'll nicely move quietly out of your way and they'll allow you to go up to the other fella. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I do it.
How has it been in recent years in terms of the quality of the fishing on the shore? I've heard stories in terms of, people kind of talking about decrying the kind of the hatches and the fly life, that it's kind of gone down in recent years and that's affecting the fishing as well. Would you agree?
There's a contradiction in a sense, right? I've been fishing the shore since I was a child. I've been fishing the shore for 50 years or thereabouts. And the best years I've had have been the last 4 in terms of quality of trout and size of trout. Now, there's a couple of reasons why. I've caught a lot of trout in the last 4 years in the 3, 4, and 5 pound bracket, right? They're big fish by any measure in any river. Now, in the preceding 20 years, I mightn't have caught a 1/10 of the amount I've caught in the last 4 years. Now, I have a theory, whether it's true or not, I don't know. I've been catching a lot of bigger fish on dry flies. We had a crayfish plague. It was brought in by kayakers, apparently. Wiped out the crayfish in the river. Now, this is just my own theory. I don't know whether it would stand up to scrutiny scientifically or anything. Those big fish would have been, their primary source of food would have been the crayfish. And now it's no longer available to them. So they have no alternative but to feed on flies. Now, that's just my theory. And hence, I've been catching a lot of more big fish on small flies, essentially, which I wouldn't have done to anything like the same degree in the preceding 20, 30 years. I hope that makes sense to you now, that you understand what I'm trying to tell you. The mayfly, right? We had a famous mayfly hatch on the shore, but it disappeared, essentially, for the last 10 years. There'd be a little dribble, maybe the last week of May, first week of June. There'd be a little dribble now and again, not enough to get fish going. But curiously enough, in the season gone by, we had a good mayfly hatch. Now, I've written an article, in fact, about that now for next May the 6th. It's out, I think, on fly fishing and fly tying, on that very subject, on, if you like it, the resurgence of the mayfly on the shore. Now, it may only be a blip. They mightn't appear again for another 10 years. But we had high water during the mayfly period in the season gone by in 21. The last week of May, the first week of June, it was just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. A friend of mine, I was fishing one day on one bank, and generally speaking, you can cross the river in a lot of places, but I saw 2 trout rising on the far bank, or under the far bank, which would be about a 20-yard cast. Now, as I've already said, a 20-yard cast is, I'd only be wasting my time. And I couldn't get over to the other bank because of the high water. So a mate of mine phoned me that evening. He said, I'm going fishing tomorrow. I said, go up to such and such a place. I said, I saw 2 trout rising. I said, if you get either one of them, I said, if you can get even one of them, I said, you'll have a serious fish. Now, this guy had never caught any really big fish in his life, right? And I have these, he had a kid with him. He brought a kid with him for the day fishing. Now, the kid wasn't fishing, but he brought his mobile phone and he videoed it. He caught both of the trout that I described to him, right? One of them was 6.5 pounds and the other was 8 pounds, right? Incredible fish. I have the photos of them. They're just animals. Now those fish came up for mayflies, right? For obvious reasons. They don't have the crayfish anymore. So now they had a substantial meal, would say, in a relatively decent hatch of mayflies. And we had a period of maybe a week to 10 days where the mayfly was back to what it was, but it was only on a particular stretch of the river, about maybe a half a mile to a mile of the river. It used to hatch all over the river. It would hatch from Thurles all the way down to nearly Care, which would be what, I suppose, go to 15 miles of the river. You would have a prolific hatch of mayfly all along that stretch, but now it was only in a section, a small section, if you like. But it was phenomenal while it was there.
Can I ask you, George, is dry fly, is that your go-to method? Is that what you...
Oh, that's my favorite method. Without, I fish all methods. Funnily enough now, I've actually, my most recent video I'll be putting it up on the channel now shortly. I did it on wet fly fishing because wet fly fishing is old hat now on the shore. Everyone fished wet flies here. When I was a young fella, nobody fished that many wet flies and dry flies. Now, every single fella you meet, Euronymph. I met lads down on the river there last year, right? They were from Dublin, as it happens, right? I never met anyone from Dublin when I was a young fella down there. But anyway, these fellas arrived on and they said they were going fishing. I got talking to them and I said, there was a few trout rising there. Oh, we don't bother with the dry fly, you know. It's we're a Euro nymphing, you know. They don't know any other method. That's it. They don't know any other method. They Euro nymph exclusively. And that seems to be the trend of people that are now coming into fly fishing. It's Euro nymphing exclusively. But I think they're at a great loss. I think they're losing out in a big way because for me, to see a trout coming up and taking your fly off the surface, particularly an educated trout that other fellas tried and they couldn't catch, to be able to catch that fish is the challenge. Euro nymphing, to me, like I do it from time to time, but like it's monotonous. It gets monotonous very quickly, you know. If I see a trout rising, I'd throw the Euro nymphing rod away. Like I'd sooner fish one trout with a dry fly than maybe catch 50 on the Euro nymph. Which, of course, is possible because it's a devastating method of catching fish. There's no question about it. It's lethal. I mean, I do it and I know how to do it, and like it's super effective. My second choice is upstream nymphing, which is like sinking dry fly, I call it. I love upstream nymphing because it's a completely different thing than Euro nymphing. And I've been doing that for donkey's years and I really enjoy that. But the principal thing is the dry. I love the dry fly. It's pure bliss.
There, you were on about the wet fly there. It was interesting because you were chatting with David.
David Donovan.
No, Dave and David
Angel.
Anshel. Yeah.
Oh, David Anshel, yes.
Yeah, and like it's just that I think David had said, well, like it wasn't sort of saying, you know, talking as if the wet fly doesn't matter, sure. Yeah, sort of like, yeah, there's no skill in it. But I would be of the opinion that like a lot of things, like people say the same about wet fly in the lake, yet there are certain people, even on a lake, that are far better wet fly anglers than other run-of-the-mills. And I've heard the same for river anglers as well. I'm sure that there's
absolutely. Yeah. I watched fellas, right? Owl stagers, as we call them, right? Owl stagers fishing wet flies. And it was absolutely poetry in motion. These fellas fish these wet flies. They'd go along, right? And they'd be ducked down. They'd be down like they were stalking a deer. And they'd flick the wet fly in under a bush. It would go into a gap maybe 6 inches wide, and that little fly would go in there, and you'd see his hand, and he'd have skill. I mean, brilliant skill. Now, I tried to do a small bit of that in the video I'm going to put up. I'll put it up in the next few days up on the channel. So have a look at it and leave a comment and tell me what you think. Wet fly fishing is neglected now, and it's so lovely and so relaxing. Like when you're fishing, say, upstream nymph or Euro nymph, there's a massive amount of concentration involved. You can be very tired after it. I mean, like you're lobbing and you're watching the line and you're feeling, and there's a huge amount of all your energy is going into it, and it's very, very, very involved. Wet fly fishing is just so relaxing. Drop your 2 or 3 little wet flies out there and let them swing around. I've rediscovered it, if you like, and I love it. I've rediscovered it after. Now, I fished wet flies a few times in recent years, but making the video about it has kind of rekindled my love for it. And I went down to a bridge down locally here and I filmed a bit of the video there. And what was really lovely was I spotted a place out in the river. The river's fairly high at the moment, but I spotted a place where I knew there had to be a trout. And I spoke to the camera and I said, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to fish that area. I won't fish off at the bank because my flies will swing too quickly because there's too much water between me and there. And I know that if I go out here, I'll be able to hold the line off the water and the flies will swing at the correct speed. And I went out and I did that, and bang, I caught this lovely trout about a pound weight. And it was great for the video, you know, because it demonstrated clearly how effective the actual wet fly is. It's a lovely way of fishing. And like I say, won't see anyone doing it anymore. And it's sad.
It's a good time of year though, as well, though, George, isn't it, for people if they're thinking of, dusting down the rods, maybe, to get out with the wet fly early in the season on the shore.
Oh, it's lovely. I mean, but I haven't seen anyone fish wet flies on the shore in donkey's years. That's literally true. And it's just so effective. Like, and I mean, it's so relaxing. It's so lovely way of fishing. You know, it's a loss really. And those guys, we say the new fellas coming in, whom like, I don't want to be disparaging in any sense, but like they're missing out on like the traditions of fly fishing, like wet fly fishing, dry fly fishing, you know, like the things that are the cornerstones of fly fishing. They're missing. I spoke to fellas down there, like I said, they're from all over the place, and they don't even have a dry fly in their box. Bead-headed nymphs, and that's it. They don't have anything else. And that's sad, I think, you know, because it's become very one-dimensional. You know?
You would hope, though, maybe that if it's a way in, that maybe then, you know, they develop on further, you hope, and, you know, they kind of go, right, I've had enough.
Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case, because you see, you can teach someone to Euro now. They don't have to be able to cast. They don't have to have any idea about the ecology of the river. All they just need to do is keep lobbing that yoke in and they'll catch fish. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong direction, but like, it's super effective, no question. Like, I mean, it's deadly, but like, it gets very monotonous for me very quickly anyway. Yeah.
I think that, isn't it? There's a time and a place for everything, you know, and it's reading the conditions as well and knowing when to use what. Like, but I think as well as I think there is a point there in the sense of it's probably it's the efficiency of it, that there's something like that that's reflective of our modern take on life.
Absolutely.
That everything we do has to be, you know, right? Yeah. I've got my hour. I've got
instant gratification.
Yeah, that's the word exactly.
What was it your man said about that? The problem with instant gratification, it just takes too long. I think there was one, I can't remember who said it. But yeah, that is there. Like, and there's so many of them, and like there's places in the river that I used to always fish, and I don't bother going out there anymore now, because every time you go there, there's fellas lobbing Euro nymphs there, you know what I mean? But they're lost when it comes to the summertime, when the river drops down, choked up with weeds and all that. They're at home watching golf or on TV, and I'm down among the weeds with my little 7-footer casting a 10-foot line and I'm catching loads of fish. Do you know what I mean? And they're losing out on the cream of it. That for me is the cream of it. And if they ever did it, they would immediately see that is the be all and end all of fly fishing, is to be able to go along when the conditions are difficult and to be able to catch fish of a July evening. That's it.
Okay, cash lagam a shorse as the current cash shots again. Will she ask all now? Can't do no. Will she pre-vodoch no? Will the club in the partoch no? Can't he just do ticket like law no like shocked.
What's fair the Tashi der fall go hotchul here? Tashi der fall fan if you want. Tani ticket and so come is fair the anya tach home. Nil she jacker me all in here. Aber le anya and Malia, Carwell, George McGrath in a coney, August surely she'd call me.
August no, it's in Ella like Sus Dorish and Shin, so will you scrap my Sus in Shin.
Oh, it's not her keen Golua Satesor. Aber Satra edition now, Tasha Untagar Fad. August Tana Tiki the done club Shinnagon Coma Kiana.
Oh, fair play. No, Chef Hawker made a question or ask him Corrib Misha, August.
Yeah,
well, Suir, Sakorib, Kaimid Smuno Fresh and Gwil, not have the Torshi, well, sort private. No, ni one private, Gwil club in the part of no, the club in August.
On the club in on a ladder and so. Oh, I'm sure Tashid on a ladder, August, on a fun of August, on a Clidiber or Shula Gomi. Yeah, Tommy on Club Archul on Shaw, Cashel Goal and Tipperary Anglers, and Beather and Club is far in the end, have Ibra there and now and August Marshinde. August Tommy the Goni a Quinal Solar now and August come to Smarta, I got Lish now and August Quillahort being a winning slash, thinking to in the hand of V is Cachor.
Well, I'm presuming anybody listening would have picked up Príomh-Bheadach agus Clubada agus Dúrlas.
But for ó héamh an íoscail an só Tom agus tú héan dar bheith fáilte roiimh bert óir be déan tangáil lomsa agus réimi de machar an án agus bheith Tom into go in there.
But you know what? I think that's the way to end it.
And a just lower live Bert.
Exactly. Well, it's been George, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. Actually, Joe, I think we should catch up with you again because I'd say sure. I think there's a lifetime of stories there still that we haven't.
Have a million of them.
We haven't even scratched the surface.
Not even scratched it, yeah.
And
I can tell you stories to make your hair stand on end.
Oh, absolutely. And come here, for anybody to go to YouTube and to go to search for Gundog and Fly in YouTube and join one of the 10,000 subscribers. Yeah. Are you going to be doing now for the coming months now? You're going to be doing regular fly fishing videos now for people?
Oh, I will indeed, yeah. I'll have a load of them. I have, like I said, I'll be putting up the wet fly one in a few days there now. I think people will enjoy that, and like I said, it's kind of rekindled my love for the old wet fly again. I have plans for other ones as well as that. I'm tying down at the Adair Springs Angling Fair the end of the month, last day of April, first day of May. Apparently, from what I understand, it's going to be a great event. There's a lot of stuff happening down there, a lot of big names arriving and stuff, so that'll be interesting, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, stay tuned for people that listen. Our next episode, we're going to be talking to Paul Proctor in the next few weeks as well. We're going to be talking about river fishing tactics as well with Paul. He'd be well known to people, especially the Trout and Salmon magazine. So, yeah, look, definitely one to look out for. George, definitely catch up with you very soon. Thanks very much for joining us.
George. Fair play with. Thanks to George McGrath for joining us on the show. And don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram. And myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.